The soldiers that Putin made the significant choice to send to the Crimean Peninsula brought back very troubling information. Putin's forces are entirely surrounded in Crimea at this point. There will be no further military operations carried out by the Russian army anywhere on the Crimean Peninsula in Crimea. Members of the pro-Ukrainian fire group responded with the appropriate response to the Russian troops. Following the occurrence of this event, Putin's policies over Crimea had a significant impact on the overall agenda for the world. After these measures, the people of Crimea began to rebel against their government. It is generally agreed that Crimea is one of the most important junctures in the continuing conflict between Russia and Ukraine, because Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky has placed such a high priority on Crimea. Many people now believe that this region is extremely significant for the purposes of Ukraine's war strategy. The territory of Crimea is of utmost significance following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2014. The strategically significant region, which had previously been occupied by the Ukrainian army, was taken over by the Russian military. The government of Ukraine at the time did not make any kind of public statement or protest. However, when Zelensky said that he would reclaim this region, it caused a significant shockwave to travel throughout the world, and it threw everything into full disarray. However, as a result of the most recent operation carried out by Ukrainian forces, the Russian army's situation in Crimea became a genuine nightmare. As a result of the pressure being applied on Crimea, the Ukrainian army began to organize ongoing military actions. During these operations, the Ukrainian army was successful in achieving its objectives and continued to strengthen its position of dominance on a daily basis by eliminating a significant number of Russian soldiers. Following these actions, which were carried out by Ukrainian forces, Putin made the decision to assemble an elite team in order to respond to the situation. This group would have complete authority over the inhabitants of Crimea and would have a say in the governance of Crimea. However, Putin's proposals were ultimately unsuccessful in every manner. After declaring that it would regain control of Crimea, Ukraine took the boldest possible action. When Vladimir Putin found out about this episode, he went completely insane. The entire world was taken aback by this clever operation that had been orchestrated by the army to begin. The Ukrainian army was well aware of everything that the Russian army was doing to organize and operate in the Crimean Peninsula. It engaged in discussions with a local opposition group in order to put an end to all of Russia's actions in these regions. This organization was consistently putting as much pressure as possible on the Russian occupiers in Crimea, and you are to banish them from the area in many different domains. The Ukrainian army served as the group's primary source of material support and supply. However, when the Ukrainian army knew about the elite teams that the Russian army had developed to halt and the Russian groups that were in this location, the Ukrainian army took action to make a different move. This occurred after the Ukrainian army learned about both the Russian groups and the elite teams that the Russian army had formed in light of the fact that certain opposition organizations were responsible for recent fires that broke out against Russian installations. The Ukrainian authorities made the decision to devise a fresh strategy for working together with the Crimean Fire Group. Even the Ukrainian army was unable to fathom the possibility that Crimea could sustain such a significant blow. The first guideline that the Ukrainian army had to follow was to determine where the elite team of the Russian army would be stationed. This highly skilled group would operate out of the Russian headquarters located close to St. Veropol. This command post was situated in close proximity to the densely populated area, which meant that the firing group would not draw any attention to itself. The Ukrainian armed forces requested that the shooting group notify the outlying quarters so that they may acquire the necessary weaponry for the operation in order to fulfill these requirements. A commercial ship brought them to the area close to Sevastopol. Following the move that was made by the Ukrainian army, the fire group moved quickly into action to deliver a significant blow to the Russian soldiers. For a very long time, the inhabitants of Crimea were also quite uneasy because of Putin's repressive and severe measures. In order to put an end to this, the citizens of Crimea came to the conclusion that they needed to stage a protest against Putin's rule. Despite the fact that such a protest was prohibited, people who were getting impatient took to the streets and began to organize themselves. After some time, this demonstration became so ineffective that Putin's elite set of soldiers had to be redirected to that region. These men were originally stationed in the outquarters, which is where the Russian commanders were housed. The fire group was able to sneak inside the outpost without being discovered since they took advantage of the circumstances. Russian troops were taken by surprise. Conflicts between the two sides broke out. In spite of the intense combat, the people of Crimea were adamant about continuing the uprising. They began swinging sticks and stones at the soldiers, as well as throwing stones at them as a result of the current circumstances. The Russian soldiers were ready to lose their commanders. They were unable to return home. The fire group started lobbing grenades into the outquarters as soon as they could. The Russian forces were figuratively and literally surrounded by members of the resistance who outnumbered the Russian invaders. Despite this, the Russian leaders who were adamant about continuing the fighting were dealt a significant setback by the resistance. The fire group started eliminating all threats posed by the Russian commanders who were surrounded by the opposition fighters. Only one of the approximately 5 commanders stationed in the outlying quarter made it out alive. This commander was given several warnings to surrender, but he did not pay any attention to the fire group's requests. Following the calls to the commander, he did not take any action of any kind in a short amount of time. The fire group resistance fighters were able to eliminate the commander who refused to submit. After everything that took place, the fire group devised a new strategy that would deliver a more devastating blow to the Russian forces. The Crimean fire group started moving the Marine Force. They had to the location of the headquarters where the majority of the explosives were kept. The building was promptly evacuated after gasoline was poured all over it, which caused the building to catch fire. This explosion, the reverberations of which could be heard all throughout Crimea, had a significant influence on the schedule of events all over the world as a result of the explosion. The demonstrations that had been planned by Crimeans were put to an end. The Russian occupants, seeing that there were no more demonstrators in the neighborhood, turned their attention to their headquarters and were taken aback by what they saw there. The outquarters had been completely destroyed by fire and flames could be seen rising several meters into the air. Following the event, the Russian military hurriedly reported it to the Kremlin out of concern. The explosion in the outer districts caused Putin to feel a tremendous amount of rage following this explosion. Putin made remarks that stunned everyone around the world. Putin stated in his statement that this explosion occurred as a consequence of an electrical leakage and that no one was injured in the outbuildings that were evacuated after the electrical leakage was noticed. Putin also stated that this explosion occurred as a result of an electrical leakage. However, soon after Putin's speech was made, an emergency proclamation was issued for the territory of Crimea. This choice was debated in every part of the world, and it became clear that Putin was extremely terrified of the rebel group in Crimea. According to information gathered from Ukrainian media, the explosion that occurred at this headquarters of the Russian army resulted in significant financial harm to the army. This information was gained from the Russian military. This incident, which cost Russia a lot of money, has done Russia a lot of damage when it comes to its dominance in Crimea. But the explosion of the Earth quarters, as well as the fact that the Russian soldiers in Edward were attempting to change the balance in the strategic location of the conflict at the same time that the men were being neutralized, were some of the reasons for the significant damage that was done to the Russian army. The Russian military's plans to invade Ukrainian territory will face significant obstacles in the face of such a significant loss in terms of personnel and equipment in the army. The Russian army, which is already struggling due to a lack of military manpower and ammunition, appears to have a difficult time recovering after being dealt such a significant blow by the fire group, the command center in Crimea, from which supplies of ammunition and weaponry were dispatched to numerous different locations, was totally wiped out. It will be possible for the Ukrainian army to retake lost territory if the occupants of Ukrainian territory have completely disarmed themselves and ended their occupation of Ukrainian territory. The Russian army, which has been victorious in no operation so far, is having a hard time on the battlefield due to the numerous setbacks it has sustained in order to make up for the losses that have been incurred as a result of disastrous operations. Massive investments are being made in the defense industry. The Russian people, who are going through a significant economic crisis as a direct result of these investments, want Putin to stop organizing protests in a variety of locations across the nation. The populace currently supports the idea that Putin should give up his power. War specialists believe that Vladimir Putin will bring about the complete collapse of Russia if he continues to be unsuccessful in his operations. The Russian military never succeeds in achieving its goal of recruiting service members from a more diverse range of countries and regions. Nobody in Russia wants to risk their lives to fulfill Putin's petty ambitions. You can show your support for us by clicking on the Super Gratitude button down below. Heroes have the ability to transform everything. Heroes are destined to emerge at the most inopportune moments. They are courageous individuals who are willing to give up a lot. Everyone is motivated by their story. Heroes in times of war have the potential to alter the course of history. There are millions of people who are educated about the activities that combat heroes participate in. Nowadays in Ukraine, a heroic figure's tale is currently being recounted. The story of this courageous individual is quite remarkable. As members of the news team, we have been researching the life of this hero specifically for you as a consequence of our extensive study. We were able to compile this fascinating news report using the material that we uncovered. If you're ready, let's get this party started. In fact, each and every soldier serving in the Ukrainian army is revered as a hero due to the fact that these men are protecting their homeland from an invasion by Russia. They are attempting to defend the towns in which they were born, the houses in which they raised their families, and the educational institutions in which they were educated. They are fighting hard to win this conflict so that they can protect their families and ensure a better future for their offspring. Because of this, Ukrainian soldiers are fighting with an incredible amount of bravery. The valor shown by Ukrainian service members has captured the attention of the international community. However, some of the troops have remarkable tales to tell. Everyone who hears about these people's lives is moved by what they hear. One of those stories that manages to move people on a fundamental level is the one about the Ukrainian artist Konstantin Savitsky. But what is it about his life that makes it so remarkable? The story of Savitsky is required to provide an answer to this question. Brovary is the city where Savitsky was born on October 30, 1982. His early years were marked by a precocious interest in both musical and artistic pursuits. He was exceptionally talented at playing the piano. Theater was another activity that piqued his interest. When he was in elementary school, it was well known that Savitsky was an exceptionally bright student. His instructors took a special interest in him because of his passion for the arts. Su began taking art classes and he quickly rose to become one of the most accomplished artists in his area. His achievements were now the topic of conversation among the locals. Almost immediately after that, he received his diploma from the orchestra department of the National Academy of Music of Ukraine. He was now considered to be one of the most influential musicians in Ukraine, despite his young age. In each and every one of his creative works, he advocated for liberation and tranquility. He was responsible for the direction of a number of theatrical works centered on this topic and produced poetry, highlighting the independence of Ukraine. He grew to be regarded as a significant emblem of the Ukrainian people. He was given a large number of words from the Ukrainian opera. However, the conflict also altered the course of his life. Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, he made the snap decision to enlist in the military right away. He rallied millions of his supporters to fight back against the Russian invasion of their country. The words spoken by Savitsky were broadcast on a wide variety of news networks in Ukraine. The unity of the Ukrainian people has been strengthened as a result of these words. His words were shared by millions of Ukrainians on social media sites, and they sent him notes of encouragement as well. Strong opposition was put up by the Ukrainian people against Russia's invasion of their country before the battle had begun. There were stories that contained entirely false information. According to these claims, a significant portion of the Ukrainian population planned to flee their nation once the conflict began. However, the people of Ukraine provided significant support to the armed forces and joined the struggle. Additionally, the actions of artists such as Savitsky contributed to an improvement in the cohesiveness of the Ukrainian people in Russia. On the flip side, there was a considerable amount of anarchy. Millions of people from Russia were forced to flee their nation. The Russian people did not back this war, and they staged a number of significant demonstrations against it. In addition to that, he was speaking about the heads of state of both countries. The young leader of Ukraine, Zelensky, made words that helped enhance the unity of the people. The statements made by Zelensky had a significant influence on the Ukrainian people. The words made by Zelensky were subjected to analysis by political scientists from around the world. However, the case was different with Putin. Putin, who has been carrying out authoritarian tactics for a significant number of years, has made harsh statements against the people of Russia. Because of this, he did not receive the backing of the Russian people, which had an impact on the direction the war took. The most significant strength that an army can have is support from the populace. The outcome of the conflict can be drastically altered by securing support. The actions of the Ukrainian artist Savitsky were motivated by this consideration. After he enlisted in the Ukrainian army, he began to battle without regard for his own safety. In the beginning, he was a part of the team that defended the city of Burwari. He fought without regard for his personal safety in order to save his hometown. It was quite impressive to see how successful he was in battle on the front in multiple conflicts. He was the one who came to the rescue of his comrades. His bravery quickly rose through the ranks as a topic of conversation in the community. Within a short period of time, Savitsky continued to battle valiantly on a number of fronts. The commanders of the Ukrainian army started bragging about their accomplishments. The Ukrainian press likewise reflected this reality as it unfolded. There were dozens of articles written on his successes at the front that were published in the local Ukrainian media. Savitsky, who had held instruments for the sake of art for many years, was now holding the gun for the sake of freedom. The young artist was tasked with using a machine gun, and he carried out his mission by killing Russian soldiers one at a time. After achieving these levels of success, he shot thousands of bullets. He eventually became an essential member of the military. He was dispatched to other places, some of which were experiencing particularly intense conflict. He was a participant in the Kharkiv bombing and took part in actions against the Russian army. He fired his machine gun towards Russian fortifications as they advanced. Stravinsky's successes were well recognized throughout the Russian army for a considerable amount of time. The Russian army had him targeted for assassination at the earliest opportunity. The Russian shooters in the Kharkiv Oblast were told to murder him. Stravinsky gave his life in a valiant effort, but was ultimately unsuccessful. His loss was very unfortunate for his commodities in arms, but in order to get revenge, they initiated a fresh operation and killed a large number of Russian snipers. The passing of Savitsky was quickly brought to the attention of the media. The passing of this man came as a great shock to the Ukrainian people. On the other hand, the passing of this man served to further harden the resolve of the Ukrainian people. According to what one resident of Ukraine remarked, millions of Ukrainians hosted prayers for him on their own social media profiles. This conflict will unquestionably end in our favor. It is imperative that we carry out this mission in honor of the tens of thousands of brave Ukrainian troops who give their lives in defense of their nation. Stavitsky has assured us that we are capable of accomplishing it. We have no choice but to continue fighting until our nation is saved. The actions of the Ukrainian people demonstrated how courageous they are in their pursuit of independence. A great number of musicians and artists from all around the world began sending words of solidarity. The motivation of the Ukrainian people came from their support of artists. Additionally, the government of Ukraine is making preparations to take significant action in this area. The government of Zelensky has a high level of sensitivity to these matters. The policies that the Ukrainian government employs toward all members of the armed forces are characterized by high levels of respect. Heroes on the battlefield are recognized and rewarded for their actions. It is anticipated that a unique presentation will immediately follow the funeral for Sorop. Reports that have appeared in the Ukrainian news indicate that his family has a chance to receive an award for heroism through this program. It is also said that after the war is over, an art school will be founded in his honor and named after him. The name Savitsky will live on in Ukrainian historical memory. His bravery will be remembered and praised by future generations. What are your thoughts on the valorous struggle that Savitsky put up? Do you think that the support that artists give to the military has an effect on the way the war is going? What are your thoughts on the valor and accomplishments displayed by the soldiers serving in the Ukrainian army? What do you anticipate the resolutions to these issues will be? What are some of the things you think will happen when the conflict is over? Remember to give us your feedback and to share your thoughts with us. Keep up with us here for further information. For Russia, one of the countries engaged in the battle, the conclusion of the most significant military operation of the 21st century will mark the end of an era. There is a significant danger on the horizon, and this danger does not just come from the land, it also comes from the sea and the air. The most recent turn of events illustrates that alarm bells should be sounding for Russia. The decision of Russian President Putin to invade Ukraine was the impetus for the events that have taken place today. Putin referred to the invasion as a special operation and declared that the objective of the invasion was to prevent NATO forces from entering Ukrainian territory. He stated that the goal of the assault was to keep NATO forces at a distance. It should come as no surprise that this was nothing more than an excuse on Putin's part, given that the Russian leader intended to construct the Russian Empire in order to one day assume the throne of the Russian Empire, which had been forgotten about. Among the aging pages of history, the city of Kiev served as the capital of the Ukrainian state. Kiev was formerly the capital of the Russian Empire. The Russian emperor could not avoid going to Kiev since it was physically impossible. The events that took place on Russia's border shook the country to its core. Undoubtedly, this was the event that marked Finland's accession to NATO. Finland is a country that shares land and maritime borders with Russia. The threat that Russia has been most concerned about has now arrived. Let's take a look at this danger that Russia faces and the hypotheses that have been put forth regarding the probable outcomes of it. Before we look at the most recent advancements, we need to run something by you to refresh your memory. The team conducts in-depth analyses and reports vital information regarding the Russia-Ukraine war, shifts in the strategic landscape, and diplomatic maneuvers. In order to carry on with this work, our careful team requires your help. You are able to show your support for this endeavor by clicking the Super Thanks button that is located at the very bottom of the film. If you are prepared, we will now proceed to the specifics of the news that we have. Russia has suffered and is continuing to suffer tremendous losses as a result of the successful operations of the Ukrainian army. Those losses have come one after another. In any case, the circumstances for Russia, which is currently engaged in a very challenging conflict with Ukraine, are becoming more challenging because Finland is now a member of the NATO alliance. The already challenging conditions have become even more severe. This fresh indication suggests that Russia has been ensnared in a rat trap. A number of times the Ukrainian army has demonstrated that Russia's borders are not nearly as safe as was previously believed. Along its perimeter, Russia suffers from a significant security gap. Therefore, it is necessary for Putin to launch the defense of the border from the front lines. However, Russia's defense cannot make use of the offensive lines in their current configuration. The invasion of Ukraine, which Russia has referred to as a unique military operation, has turned out to be a nightmare for the country. Despite the fact that the operation was designed to keep Russia's borders secure, has resulted in them becoming even more unsettling. At present, Russia's borders are guarded by some of the world's most technologically advanced weapons, as well as some of the most formidable military formations. Putin took a significant hit as a result of the significant development in the northern region of Russia, because Putin will no longer be able to make effective use of the Black Sea. He will no longer be able to behave as he pleases in the Baltic Sea. Putin's freedom to maneuver has been severely constrained as a result of the threat that has emerged in the northern regions of Russia. Russia's border, which is its greatest fear, has reached nearly 1,500 kilometers in length as a result of Finland's accession to the NATO military alliance. As a result of this evolution, the major cities of Russia, such as St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and Kunitskaya, have become the country's soft tissue. These cities in Russia are easy prey for operations that can be coordinated by naval landing ships, and they can be conquered rapidly. The situation from escalating into a heated battle in the region cannot be prevented by the naval troops stationed in the Baltic by Russia. There is a possibility that Russia will fully lose its power in the Baltic Sea. The presence of Russian warships in the Baltic Sea is not the only factor that contributes to the region's significance as a danger to Russia. It is probable that in the event of a battle in the Baltic Sea, the aircraft carriers that will be stationed in the area will serve as a home base for fighter jets that will engage in combat with Russia. These aircraft carriers make it possible to actively employ F-35 fighter jets, which are fighter jets of the fifth generation. Therefore, Moscow, the country's capital and the country's heart, is totally surrounded. The danger that comes from the north has put Russia in a difficult position. The geopolitical position of nations such as Estonia, Finland, and Sweden pose a significant danger to the supply lines that Russia uses. There are storage facilities belonging to the Russian military located in the northern regions of Russia. These facilities has a significant quantity of ammunition. it is necessary to maintain a parallel path along these boundaries in order to transport the ammunition stored in these depots to the Russian forces who are fighting on the front lines. If the tensions continue to rise, however, it is believed that the countries indicated above will be forced to destroy the supply lines as a result of the conflict. In the following days, it's anticipated that another Scandinavian nation, Sweden, would become a member of the NATO alliance. As a result of Sweden's accession to NATO, the entire Russia Sea route, which extends from the Baltic Sea to the Atlantic Ocean, will be entirely under the organization's command. In earlier reports, we made note of how the Ukrainian army was conducting operations in the Black Sea against significant trading ports belonging to Russia. These actions were directed against the ports, have inflicted significant damage on the economy of Russia. A massive ambush has been set for Russia, but there has been no armed conflict in any of the other significant seaports. As soon as the press learned about what had happened in Finland, there was a dramatic turn of events in Russia. An office at the Russian Defense Ministry building in Moscow was the location of the fire that broke out. Panic ensued as a direct result of the fire that broke out in the structure, which is strategically important to the Russian armed forces. It is believed that Russian bureaucrats who are opposed to the occupation are the ones responsible for starting this fire. Relations between NATO and Russia have been tense for a very long time. Putin, a former intelligence officer for the Soviet Union who now harbors ambitions of becoming the Russian emperor, has a profound understanding of the current era. Therefore, he considers NATO to be a significant roadblock in the way of Russia and Putin's goals. Putin is in a difficult position since he does not want to allow the so-called NATO danger to come close to Russia's borders. This presents a significant conundrum for Putin. The expansionist policies of Russia under Putin have created a great deal of unease in Finland. In response to the mounting danger posed by Russia, Finland has submitted an application to become a member of the NATO alliance. Since the end of World War II, Finland has maintained a policy of neutrality. The membership application from Finland had just been approved by the organization. The following comment was made by U.S. Secretary of State Abraham Lincoln. The thought crosses our minds that this is the one and only thing for which we should be grateful to Mr. Putin because he has once again been the cause of something that he claims he wants to prevent through the aggression of Russia, which has led many countries to conclude that they need to do more to watch out for their own defense and to make sure that they can repel any potential aggression from Russia in the future. The degree of alarm that Russia has expressed over Finland's accession to NATO can be deduced from the fact that Russia has criticized Finland's membership. In a statement, Dmitry Peskov, the spokesperson for the Kremlin, claimed that this new development has forced Moscow's hand must take preventative precautions in order to guarantee its safety. He claimed that Russia will begin taking substantial actions on Monday in response to NATO's expansion and will further boost its military presence. He also mentioned that Russia would expand its military presence. The Russian advance has been stopped at numerous spots in the border region, which Russia has been fighting to occupy for a significant amount of time. This has been made possible by the outstanding efforts of the Ukrainian army in the front line. The defense put up by the Ukrainians is not letting up. There have been no developments that are encouraging for Russia in the region, but Russian propaganda is willing to publish a variety of news stories claiming that the city has fallen. The number of people killed or injured in Russia each day is rising at an astonishing rate. The following is a breakdown of Russia's losses. According to the most recent data, 176,240 members of the armed forces, 3,629 tanks, and 7,005 other types of armored combat vehicles. There are 2,707 artillery systems, 532 reactive spread-fire systems, 280 air defense systems, 306 aircraft, 291 helicopters, 5,573 pieces of automobile and tank equipment, 18 pieces of military shipping and boats, 911 cruise missiles, 2,283 unmanned area vehicles, and 299 special machines, 5 operational tactile missile systems. As a result of recent events, we are able to understand that Russia's desperation has reached a significant new level. The question is, what does Putin intend to do, and what is it that is going to be a very difficult time for Russia? Will the overwhelming dominance of NATO on the Russian border be enough to deter Russia from launching an invasion? What would the repercussions be if there was a battle between NATO and Russia?